Welcome to Poisoner's Almanac. I'm Adam.
And I'm Rebecca.
And today we are talking about...
We're going to be talking about what a poison is, which sounds like it's self-explanatory, but I feel like we should start there.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about a couple of... We're going to be talking about a couple of specific poisons. Hemlock is a...
Yes, I've heard of it.
Is a fun one.
Okay.
And aconite, also known as monkshood or wolfsbane.
Wolfsbane.
You could think about,
I'm definitely going with wolfsbane when I talk about it.
Well, we'll go over why it's called that too, but
okay.
Many of you who've watched Harry Potter, that's a question that Professor Snape asks. What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane? It's the same, actually.
Those are real?
Yes.
I thought they were fictitious.
No.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's a thing. So there's one application in pop culture right there.
Okay.
So what is a poison? So the Oxford English Dictionary defines the noun as a substance capable of causing the illness or death of a living organism when introduced or absorbed. So you don't even have to ingest some of these. You can breathe it in. Touching it can cause reactions. A lot of different poisons act differently on the human body and other organisms as well, differently. So we're talking about plants, metals, other elements, gases, animal toxins like venom.
Mothers-in-law.
Yeah. Okay.
Just kidding. Your mom's great.
So, have you ever heard of the? It's a quote, and it is basically that it's the dose that makes the poison. You ever heard of that?
The dose that makes the poison?
It's the dose that makes. You never heard of that?
No.
Okay. Well, it comes from someone named Paracelsus. He was a Swiss physician.
Did you say Peristalsis?
Paracelsus is his name. Okay, he was a Swiss physician,
because
and
I know
he was a philosopher of the German Renaissance.
Okay. So forgive me, listeners.
Okay.
We both work in healthcare, so I know the term peristalsis from.
That is, yes.
I thought she said peristalsis.
Although
Please continue.
peristalsis is, a part of ingestion, so.
Correct.
So
it's still pertinent.
Mnemonic device.
It's still pertinent.
Okay. So.
And I knew that.
He's credited as saying all things are poison and nothing is without poison. The dosage alone makes it so a thing is not a poison.
It's giving killer.
Basically, the dose makes the poison.
Okay. And
that's where that comes from. So if everything is a poison, what about air or water? Did you hear about the case, is it this past summer where the woman, she felt really dehydrated. They were on a boat trip.
Yeah.
She came home. Or I don't know if she was home yet, but she drank 4 bottles of water in 20 minutes or under. And she ended up passing away from water intoxication.
That's crazy.
From water intoxication. So yeah, you can drink too much water and basically drown yourself. Is that a poison necessarily? No, but it can
it
kill
illustrates
you.
the
Right.
point, yeah.
It's just,
the dose makes the poison.
Yeah, anything can kind of
okay.
kill you in certain amounts. Oxygen. You ever have patients that are on oxygen, but they're only on a set amount.
And they turn it up of their own accord.
But yeah. Anyway, yeah. So, but too much oxygen can actually overwhelm the lungs' ability to move blood, to move that oxygen around the body through the blood. So,
right.
Which can ironically suffocate you. So you're on oxygen, but you actually suffocate.
But you got suffocated by oxygen toxicity.
Yes, very complicated.
Yes.
So those are just 2 examples. Those are things we need to survive, but in the wrong doses, even they can...
They are poison.
Yeah, they can. Actually, when I was in nursing school, this has been a while now, but when we were learning about cancer, one of the first things they taught us was the biggest risk factor for cancer, breathing oxygen. So, there you go. Sucks for all of us.
I'll get right on that.
Breathing humans and animals. Anyway, so the lady that died from the water intoxication, basically her electrolytes went crazy off balance.
Totally.
That's how that
or
works.
Osmolality.
And your kidneys can't keep up with all that in such a short amount of time.
No.
So really sad, but definitely something you should definitely be aware of. Don't drink water that fast.
Sure.
And also stay hydrated.
Right. It's both,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah. Stay hydrated though.
Yeah.
So anyway, with all that being said, we're going to focus on a couple of poisons, starting with hemlock. And I know you're going to know this name, Socrates. Remember Socrates?
Oh, yeah.
Socrates.
Socrates.
Bill and Ted, little Bill and Ted.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you haven't seen that movie, we're getting old.
Have you seen
Please
Bill and
tell me
Ted's
you've-
Excellent
please.
Adventure, or are you an idiot?
Oh my gosh. Great movie though. I
Amazing.
mean, it's Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves' best work.
Yeah.
He's great. He's had a lot of great movies.
Anyway, Socrates. So Socrates obviously was the philosopher. This was at a time too when it was pretty common in certain cultures for suicide to be just sort of a permissible thing. Like it was the honorable thing to do if you were on the battlefield, and instead of falling into enemy hands, you would
fall on your sword.
Right, you would
cetera.
it was okay to kill yourself, that kind of thing. It was the honorable thing to do. Well, they also did that with criminals. If you got the death penalty, you were just given, basically, you could be given hemlock or whatever poison they wanted to. It was basically state supported.
Euthanasia.
Yeah, basically.
Wow.
So yeah, the word toxin, when we're talking about hemlock, we're talking about aconite. These are both toxins, and that word actually comes from the Greek word toxicon or toxicos, which refers to poison arrows. So we're talking about way back when people used to coat their arrows in things like hellebore, things like that.
Bloodbane.
Yeah. So, sure. Which itself, hellebore we'll talk about that too. It's a deceptively pretty flowering plant that you may have in your gardens right now. That's actually very poisonous. But yeah, so Socrates is the long dead philosopher that we know for things like the only thing I know is that I know nothing. You ever heard that quote? Socrates, yes. He was the teacher of Plato. And he was well liked for a while until he wasn't.
Right. Until that stopped.
Yeah.
And he entered his suicide by poison era.
Well, there's several books, I believe, written by Plato himself, and it's like you have Apology, Crito, and goodness, what's the last one? Phaedo. I honestly cannot pronounce it. It's the Phaedo.
FIFA.
Phaedo.
FIFA World
and
Cup.
that basically, it basically documents his trial, which took a long time. I think it was like 6 hours overall. It took a while. Okay, and we're talking about people who had nothing better to do anyway. Let's be honest. So they came for him with the whole, you're not into our gods like we want you to be.
Totally.
So he actually had this daemon, I think he called it, where it was basically like his conscience. It was like, it tells me when not to do something. I'm like, isn't that your conscience? But okay.
Yeah, it's just your...
Sure, whatever. So you also know like the Socratic method. He was big on like question for question, getting you to question yourself by asking you those kind of questions.
And the most gangster thing ever would have been for Socrates to call it the Socratic method.
Okay. Not very humble of him, but hey, we call it that today.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so he was also known for corrupting the youth by teaching what he taught. Youths, yeah. Which, if you think about it, there's a lot of these people in history. I mean, you have Socrates, you have Jesus taught things. People liked him up until a time when they didn't.
Except when they didn't.
As soon as they feel threatened, what do? They want you dead, right?
Correct.
So, same thing happened with Socrates. He was accused of corrupting the youth, and he was ordered to drink a cup of hemlock. And it was funny because he actually, when they gave him the death penalty, he was kind of sarcastically was like, "How about a small fine?" Which didn't go over very well with the people there either. And I think he was like, gosh, what was he, like 70? He was in his 70s, I think. He was an older gentleman at this point.
Okay.
So what is hemlock? Hemlock is it contains an alkaloid toxin, and it disrupts the central nervous system, leading to respiratory muscle paralysis. Even touching it can lead to skin reactions. It's not a fun plant to deal with.
It's nowhere near me at the moment, and I'm
Right.
still terrified. Please continue.
One thing to note about hemlock, though, and this is actually, hemlock grows in lots of places, including here in the U.S. It's a very tall,
Just keeps getting worse.
it's a very tall plant. I think it's like, it can grow up to like 6 to 8 feet tall, I believe.
Oh, God.
It's pretty big. But it's like, it also looks a lot like wild carrot, which is Queen Anne's lace, I believe, is also the other name for it. And it can look like if you ever grow parsley and it starts to bolt, which is something it does like right before it dies. It bolts, has these white flowers.
Okay, so how do we know our herb garden does not have hemlock in it?
Well, for one, I didn't plant hemlock.
Oh, great. Okay, good.
Okay, but also hemlock has these. If you look at the stem, it's going to have these purple spots or blotches all over it.
Okay.
If you're not sure, just don't handle it. If you are not sure what something is, don't pick it and think, I'm a forager, and eat it. Don't do that.
The way that your voice changed. Don't do that.
Don't.
It's like you've dealt with so many people who have done this.
Don't pull a PETA.
Oh, man.
Where he takes the berries and he's like, yeah, I'm going to try these. No. If it hadn't been for Katniss, he'd have ate those suckers and he'd have been dead.
I will even let Michael die.
Oh, my gosh. Anyway, so yeah, if you're unsure about something, there was actually a guy that was on a hike. I think he was an actor, and I cannot remember his name. And it wasn't hemlock; it was hellebore.
And the Australian guy.
Yeah, he was an actor. 2004,
something
like that.
You mentioned this earlier today.
Yeah, he mistook hellebore for some sort of wild carrot because the root looks kind of similar. And
if I had a nickel for every time wild carrots were mistook, I'm telling you.
Just don't do it. Just don't do it.
Okay.
Also, leave the mushrooms alone if you don't know what you're doing. We'll go over mushrooms in a later episode because there's some killers.
Okay.
Including the one that inspired the mushroom for the Mario Brothers. We'll go over that later, though. Yeah.
Okay.
I told you I wasn't gonna go off on tangents.
Okay, but I'm excited.
I'm doing my best not to do that.
All right. Here we go.
All right, back to Socrates, our good old Socrates. So, when he was ready, they brought him this cup of hemlock. It's a
cup of small fine.
A concoction of hemlock.
Yes.
Brewed hemlock.
As one does.
And it can start to act within like 30 minutes. And he asked I don't know, would you call him an executioner? The one handing him this hemlock? He's not like cutting off his head, but he's not like, anyway.
Executioner, personal assistant to the emperor. What's the difference?
Yeah. The hemlock bringer. He asked the hemlock bringer.
Oh, man.
To, so what do I do? Obviously you drink it, but he's basically asking like, so what's going to be the play-by-play here, right? and Plato actually, he writes all this down because he wants him to be remembered, but a lot of what he wrote, we'll get to that in a second. The guy tells him, drink it, walk around until you start to feel weak and numb, then lay down and let it do its work, basically. So
that is so
when you ingest any part of this plant, it will cause muscle weakness. It's going to cause, honestly, muscle paralysis, gastrointestinal pains, nausea, vomiting, increased heart rate, excessive salivation. Lovely. It's going to
just you on a Tuesday.
You won't be able to speak very well. Just kind of what you just said. And then later you would experience things like convulsions and just respiratory paralysis. You wouldn't be able to breathe. So you basically die of asphyxiation because the muscles that help you breathe are horrible. You can't breathe. So
hard pass.
Yeah. So then you end up, you could also have blindness, coma, death, basically. So that's the progression of things.
Cause of death is death.
There is no antidote.
Okay.
These days, if you were to ingest hemlock, which doesn't happen too often, but it accidentally happens sometimes, you would have to have your stomach pumped, and that might help. Might, if you're lucky. It depends on the dose you took. So, yeah, again, I'll say it. Don't, if you're an amateur forager,
which I'm not,
please be careful. Because this stuff grows everywhere.
There are things that I am an amateur at. Yeah. Foraging is not one of them.
Yeah.
I'm not going to start that.
And remember, if it's got purple
Splotches.
on the stem, don't just leave it alone.
Splotches get notches.
Now, I will say,
I don't know what that means. I'm just.
Plato wrote basically that he walked around for a bit, and then he laid down, and the guy that gave him the cup was feeling his skin, and it was cold, and Socrates was still speaking and basically told Plato to offer a sacrifice to Asclepius. He was just doing his thing, and then when it reached his heart, he died, and it sounded so peaceful. It's not peaceful. I imagine he just didn't want to write that his teacher was
suffocating
and having a really rough go of it. He didn't want him to be remembered with all those other symptoms that aren't pretty.
Yeah.
So that's Hemlock. There's actually an episode. Remember Longmire?
Yes.
There's an episode where
such a good show.
There was a poisoning. It was a water hemlock poisoning.
Oh, I forgot that.
Yep, there's an episode. I don't remember what episode it is, but if you like Longmire, there is an instance of water hemlock poisoning in one of those episodes. I need to find that episode.
It is a beautiful day at the Red Pony and continual soiree. My name is Henry.
Good
How may
show,
I help
though.
you?
If you like
Absolutely.
mysteries and you
My
like
goodness.
it's kind of a Western feel, but not like so much of a Western feel that it's cliche Western.
It's modern day, but it's way out in Wyoming.
And it's got one of the best actresses in it.
Which would be?
You know her name.
I've completely forgotten.
She played Vic.
I know, but I can't.
She's also
Katie Sackhoff.
Yes.
Yes. All right.
She's also in The Mandalorian. Anyway.
Yes. She's great.
Yes. So, yeah. So that's Hemlock.
Amazing.
Hemlock. And I did mention a little bit of hellebore in there too. You may actually have, there's people grow hellebore. I think I'm saying it right. Hellebore, boar of hell. No, hellebore. Hellebore is also known as Christmas roses or Lenten roses. So, if you have those, you might have those growing in your
Can't say that
garden.
I do.
They grow in the shade. They're very pretty. Deceptively
grow
pretty.
In the shade.
Yeah, like in the shade of trees or in the shade of houses. They're a common, pretty flowering plant to own, but they're poisonous. Very poisonous. Anyway, we're going to talk about aconite, which is also known as the queen of poisons. This is the one that's also known as monkshood and wolfsbane. The reason why it was called wolfsbane was back in medieval times, people would coat arrows in this poison and kill wolves.
Oh, wow.
With it. That's why it's called wolfsbane.
Oh, man. Okay.
Now, it's also called monkshood because of the shape of the flowers. It's these pretty flowers that are usually kind of like a bluish purple color, and they look like a monk's hood. They're kind of funny shaped like that.
Interesting.
So,
okay, so you're shifting to aconite now.
I am.
Okay. All right, let's do this.
Aconite is another old poison. By old, I mean it's mentioned a lot through history. It was actually one of the first mentionings of it is about where the Greeks believe it came from. Believed it came from. They believe that while Hercules was fighting Cerberus, that three-headed dog, from Hades. Yes, that one. While he was fighting Cerberus.
I'm going to edit that out.
Gotcha. Yeah, so while Hercules was fighting Cerberus on the hill of Aconitus.
Cerberus is the name of an exotic auto rifle in Destiny 2.
It's also the three-headed dog.
It's also the three-headed dog.
Hades.
I know there's a huge overlap between our listenership and the Destiny 2 player base.
Okay.
So
okay.
I just want to take care of all of you at once. Please continue.
Anyway, so it is said that Cerberus was drooling while he was fighting Hercules, and the drool made the plants on the hill of Aconitus poisonous. So that's where they say aconite comes from.
Oh, wow.
So.
And you really know your stuff.
I've probably researched this a little too much, to be honest. That, hey, we all have our weird things, right?
Yeah, totally. You're going to kill me.
I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to kill anybody.
Okay.
I couldn't even swat a fly.
But probably.
So, interestingly enough, even though every part of this plant is poisonous, there are practitioners of like Chinese and Hindu alternative medicine that sometimes prepare the roots to treat certain like cardiac issues.
Oh, the do your own research physicians?
Yeah, rheumatism and neuralgias. And the thing is, like, if it's prepared properly, it might not hurt you.
Oh, okay.
It might not.
Okay. But you got to know what you're doing, huh?
There's a lot of, yeah, you've really got to be cautious. So, because there are fatal aconite poisonings from improper production of medicines every year. So
for sure.
There was, like recently there were 15 cases that were reported at a birthday luncheon in 2018.
Of poisoning by aconite?
In Southwest, it was in the southwest of China. And it was because of homemade liquor with medicinal aconite.
Oh dear.
5 people died.
Oh my gosh.
So it was not prepared correctly.
That's awful.
And had disastrous results. So,
okay.
Yeah. So what can these victims of aconite poisoning expect? So first you would have a burning or tingling sensation in your throat and on your lips. Not very fun, I imagine. Again, excessive salivation, nausea, and vomiting comes soon after that, followed by dizziness, vision impairment, muscle weakness, hallucinations sometimes, sensory disturbances.
Okay.
Eventually, you will have a massive cardiac arrest.
Oh, dear.
And likely succumb to that.
Okay.
As you know, for the heart to beat normally, there are pumps that move sodium ions in and out of cells.
For sure, bro.
That must function properly.
They must.
Aconite disrupts this process, and it causes the heart to beat abnormally.
What a gangster move.
So, and it doesn't just do that. Remember, the heart is a muscle, right?
It is.
So it also does this to other nerve and muscle cells. So that's where you get the spasms and seizures that will also happen with this.
I'm already out. I hate it.
With this.
Thanks. I hate it.
And you're going to see a lot of similarities between some of these poisons because the body reacts.
I figured,
you know, similarly to these things.
But that's such a gangster move. Disrupting sodium ion transfer.
Wait till we get to heavy metals. That's a fun one.
Man. I don't always poison someone, but when I do, I disrupt their sodium ion transfer in the cardiac.
Again, there is no antidote, but there is supportive care.
We support you, then you die.
To treat arrhythmias, and you can do charcoal. They can give you activated charcoal if there's any other.
Listen, you just said one of my favorite terms in all of medicine: activated charcoal. I'm like, do you flip a switch? Like, how do we?
It basically absorbs all the other toxins.
Does the ER doc go in a closet and say, charcoal, activate?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I want to talk about an instance where aconite was used.
Please do.
In a crime that happened in 2009. Because while I love poisons, I also love true crime. Oh boy. Not because I like that people do stuff to each other. That's just terrible.
You relax by listening to murder.
Well, I do. I love the forensic process and, how far we've come in handling this kind of, because honestly, when it comes to poisoning cases, these days it's going to be a lot harder to get away with. And that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. But it was actually quite common way back when.
Totally. Before toxicology advanced. Yeah.
And I mean, it was borderline fine for you to just poison one another because, who would know?
Sure. Presidents know.
Oh my gosh. So we're going to talk about the Curry killer.
There better be one of those.
In 2009. And I hope I get these names right. I'm not the best with remembering names anyway, but pronouncing names I'm also not that great at, but I did look it up, so I'm going to try my best. Lakvinder Chima was also known.
Nailed it. That's exactly how I was going to say it.
His nickname, mind you, was Lucky. Lucky Chima. It's not funny. This poor man died an agonizing death.
It's not funny at all.
Was murdered.
It's just funny to me.
He was murdered on January 27th.
He was muck ducked.
2009. in West London. Only a month earlier, he was hospitalized with suspected poisoning. Okay.
Oh.
So a little bit of background.
Okay.
He was having an affair with a woman named Lakvir Singh.
Who was also nicknamed Lucky.
No, she was not. She was married with 3 children, and I think her husband was actually going through cancer treatments at this time too.
Oh,
Pretty messed up. But they had an affair for like, I mean, it was years they were having this affair for. It was yeah. Ugh. So Lucky, really, he decided to call things off with Singh.
What a guy.
After a 16-year affair with her.
Oh my God.
To get engaged to a younger woman, you know. And
I am shook.
Lakvir Singh did not like this. And she was quite verbal about the fact that she didn't like it, because she also threatened to burn his house down with him in it.
Well,
so he was poisoned a month before his death. And they were pretty sure of it. They went back and found out, yes, that was indeed true.
Unreal, dude.
And while he survived that first bout of poisoning, he did not survive a month later. So Lakvir Singh actually traveled to India to procure something known as, I think it's called Bic. I think it's pronounced Bic. And it is basically made up of aconite. It's a poison that's made in Indian. It's basically aconite, like in a powder form.
She went from the UK to India to get this.
Well, yeah, I mean, she might have been. Wow. I don't know if she has family there or not, but so she snuck. After this, when she came back, she snuck into Lakvinder's house. I don't want to call him Lucky, because this is just not appropriate.
Unlucky,
and
if you will.
Laced leftover curry that was in his fridge with the poison, knowing that he and his fiance would later eat it. Okay.
He got the fiance too?
She got the fiance too. So Chima had 2 servings of this curry. Okay, and the fiance ate it too, but Chima had much more of it. And he became ill pretty quick, started vomiting, complaining of numbness in his face. Honestly, if I had just been poisoned a month before, I'm not eating anything like that hasn't been checked out.
No way.
Now I understand, like, you know, I don't know, you don't think people are going to come in your house, but still. So he ended up losing vision, couldn't move his arms or legs. So someone took him to the hospital. He died within an hour of arriving to the hospital. Oof. His fiance was placed in a medically induced coma, and she later made a full recovery. So she lived.
Did.
Yes, she lived.
Oh my God.
Now Singh tried to put the blame on her brother-in-law, but there was another lodger that saw her messing with the curry. So there was a witness to this. Okay. And they also found this bag containing this brown powder, and she claimed it was medicine for a rash that she had. But when
medicine for rash decisions.
But I guess she didn't think they were going to test it. They tested it, and it was the aconite. It was the poison.
My goodness.
So she obviously went to trial for this, and she ended up getting sentenced to life with a minimum of 23 years.
Wow.
So, she sounds like she's not sorry, to be honest, because she threatened the man. It wasn't like she hadn't planned it. She literally traveled and got this poison.
There's a lot going on there.
So, I hope she doesn't get out anytime soon, because
that
is
a vicious crime.
Pretty awful.
She completely put that other woman.
Well, she didn't care.
No, not at all.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, her poor husband, too. Her husband's going through cancer treatments. Her children. Her poor children. She didn't care. She didn't care.
I can't even imagine.
So, but yes, that's aconite. There's, like I said before, there's a lot of accidental aconite poisonings. You just have to be careful what you're eating. Be careful of those alternative medications. And honestly, if you're going to go the alternative medicine route, I'm not going to be judgmental, but I will say, please tell your doctor if you're doing that, because if you have other medications, like, those alternative medicines can really interact with other medications or even diet, those kinds of things. So you really have to be careful with that stuff anyway. But if aconite is mentioned, I would stay away from it.
Okay. Duly
It's-
noted.
It's called the Queen of Poisons for a reason.
If it comes up at a party, I'm out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's called wolfsbane, for goodness sake. If it kills
Okay.
wolves, it's going to kill you too.
For sure. Wolves are tougher than me. We know this.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
but that's what I've got for you.
All right. All right. That's the podcast for now. We'll see you guys in the next episode.